strong women are in your genes.
Yes, it takes a strong woman to make a strong woman. Amen.
But now, with 24/7 on your phone, you can get bad news from every corner of the world 24/7. You can be worn out from other people's bad news.
When there's millions of new agents coming into the marketplace who don't know how to set up an office, run a business, get clients, serve clients, in most every industry from real estate to insurance to the RIAs in the financial space.
Hello, Melanie Warner. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm so happy to see you for this interview. And I understand you had a nonstop crazy weekend in the Big Apple. And I'm going to want to ask you questions about that because you had two simultaneous amazing launches. People who can't catch flights because TSA and mechanical things. And oh my gosh, so many stories. But you are a woman of stories. And so I want to introduce the audience here. Founder, Defining Moments Press. You've been doing that for 6 years. You started your media career as a teenager. So I won't say how many years that is, but it's decades since you were a teenager. And so a radio DJ as a teenager, you just dropped in a slot and hit go. So that's very exciting to be a global media entrepreneur. Okay, so I'm going to get some of the headline news here. You travel the globe, Global Businesswoman of the Year in Dubai. You spoke to the UN. For heaven's sakes, and you have stories about people in India. You have traveled worldwide. Your home base is Central California, but you were just spent the weekend in New York City getting the simultaneous launch of your podcast and your TV show. So, book publishing, not enough. No, we're going to go big. So, you're building this huge media portfolio. Congratulations. And I
Thank you.
want to know more about that. Tell us about the launch in New York. And I have more questions for you, but we can start there.
Okay, so the launch in New York has been really fun. I feel like it's been a lifetime in the making, things that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. First of all, there's a book that's very personal to me. Now, I've written a lot of books. I've actually been in publishing for 15 years,
Wow.
but started my just like the corporation name is matching the brand about 6 years ago.
Oh, good.
And so we've produced thousands of books of our own, like our clients and some, and then our own books as well, and collaboration books and such. So out of all the books though that I've done, my very first book was my most personal, and then this one that I just launched is extremely personal. It's called The Cash Value of a Woman.
Yes.
And it is based on a famous essay that my great grandmother wrote in the winter of 1915. So
Oh
more
my
on that in
gosh.
just a little bit. But
Yes,
that
it's in your
book,
genes. This is what you're telling me. Strong women are in your genes.
yes, it takes a strong woman to make a strong woman. Amen.
Amen.
So it was like, so we launched this book and then we launched our podcast for Defining Moments as well, because I've been threatening to do one forever. So why not? Right. And we made it an extension because we're also filming a TV show about defining moments. And so the podcast is a way to get to know some of the people that we featured on the TV show and their stories a little bit more extended because they're shorter interviews on TV. So in 48 hours, we flew to New York. We launched the TV show. We filmed the TV show. We launched the book, had a billboard in Times Square, a celebrity chef dinner with 14
Mm.
people. We launched the podcast. And then I spoke at the United Nations as well during the Women's UN 70 event that is Women's History Month as well. So there's a lot happening in the last few days.
It has to be
Not to mention,
exciting to be at the
yeah,
center of it, to be at the
it
center
was
of some of it.
It was so funny. So I had a client that was with me and she's, wow, how many dreams can you make happen in 24 hours? It's just,
Go, go.
you're like Willy Wonka of the media world. Like it was really fun. And so to me, I love life experience. I love being able to help people do things that other people think are impossible.
Sure.
And my real superpower is building platforms that allow other people the chance to share their story and their genius with the world. And that's what I've really been doing since I was a teenager in radio and media.
Very exciting. I know we'll have lots of notes and things in our show notes, but one of them is the number sevenfigurebookmethod.com. And
Yes.
that's where you invite subject matter experts, people have the compelling stories to look at, can we publish a book for you? Tell us what you want the world to know. and they just might be very good at something, or they may have a very compelling story. And now, for so many years, you've seen so many of these people in these stories, you know which ones to spotlight and highlight, and you can help those stories come to life for other people. We were talking a little bit before we hit record about content and how important it is to be selective about the content you let into your life and your mind, and the doom scrolling of gossip and horror. People say in a small town, when you would read the morning paper, you could only have so much bad news. But now, with 24/7 on your phone, you can get bad news from every corner of the world 24/7. You can be worn out from other people's bad news, but you don't feature horror or betrayals. You really feature inspiring stories of people with resilience and who triumph. And that's what we should be feeding ourselves when we're taking in content for media, and you're producing it. On behalf of the English speaking world, thank you that we have
Well,
content like this to turn to.
thank you so much. And as a journalist, I was formally trained and learned if it bleeds, it leads. So it's your job as a journalist is to basically sell newspapers or to get eyeballs on your station or
Mhm,
on your radio. Like everybody's competing in the marketplace for attention. And I
mhm,
think this was one of my biggest fears going into all of this and shifting from that reality of like just bad news all the time, but wanting to share hopeful stories. Because I often say we have enough dope dealers in the world and we need
mhm.
more hope dealers in the
There
world,
we
right?
go. Yes, a little more
So,
hope dealing. Well,
so,
and
but yet there weren't platforms for that. Even with social media, look what people did with social media, Mirna. They
mm,
literally take it in to bully people to death,
yes,
to where some people are getting like bullied so much that they're taking their own lives, like these teenagers and stuff.
shamed, deplatformed, censored, belittled,
It's
and
horrible. And I'm like, aren't we better than that as human beings? Like, if media used to be a protected source, it was very highly designed to keep people out, just like Hollywood, just
right,
like the book publishing
with
space.
gatekeepers and
And that was set up for a reason. It was really about protecting the integrity of the content that was going out, regardless of who you agree with politically, that doesn't
right.
matter. But the
Mhm.
bottom line is the intention behind the media companies was to produce the truth, to
Integrity, to be the
really have
paper of
integrity.
record,
Yes.
right? To not let democracy die in darkness.
And you
Mhm,
were measured by your integrity. That is how people aligned with you and would choose to work with you as a journalist or as a newspaper. And the jobs that you got, how
mhm,
well did you report this? And
mhm,
I was a travel journalist for about 20 years as well, which I loved. It was so much fun because
mhm,
that was all fun stuff and people loved it. And
mhm,
so I finally started realizing I don't have to do these sensational stories to compete in that marketplace. And
mhm.
what if I start sharing these defining moments? And I certainly had my own defining moments, and I
Of
started
course.
meeting a lot of other people that had their defining moments.
Mhm,
And so we created a book and a
mhm,
book series. And
mhm.
initially, our book series, I had a publishing deal with Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Oh,
And then they sold their company.
um,
And my book went along with it. And I
mhm.
had a meeting with a new owner who was going in a different direction, nothing against that, but
Sure.
I knew it wasn't where I wanted my books to go.
The
So
alignment wasn't there anymore.
and it was a different, and we can now see it's gone in a different direction, and that's okay for that's what their choice. But
Mhm,
I chose to pull my books out of that deal, and
mhm,
everybody thought it was crazy. Like, this is the biggest publishers on the planet. Why would you do that? And I just had to trust my soul, my gut, that
yes.
something else was going to come from that. So I built my own platform called Defining Moments Press, and we started doing book publishing. That
Mhm,
led to speaking on stages, doing podcasts, getting people booked in the media. It evolved from there to now doing television shows as well. And it's
mhm,
all based on that nonfiction expertise space. So it's just expanded into these global platforms for people, and I really, when I think back to what I've been doing and what I really truly love is creating platforms for people to share their stories and their genius with the world. And
yeah.
that's the common theme of my whole adult life.
It's very exciting. And I know as a coach that when you show somebody else could do it, then another person is willing to try. She figured it out, or he tried and he got somewhere. And maybe it wasn't a straight line, maybe it was the bumblebee line, how you get there. But it inspires people to try. It inspires people to try again. It inspires people to imagine what if I did this differently or I created an opportunity. When you look at the media landscape today, there's so much independent media. And I think about different, even news reporters who were canceled by their network because it didn't agree with the narrative opinion of the network, and they join another network, and then there's a disagreement there, and finally they're independently publishing on Substack or on a podcast because they want to have their own voice come true. You want to sing the song that's in your heart, right? You want to showcase the stories valuable, and you have to be independent to do that today.
Yes, because there's just so much need for content. And what's happening is all these, because of AI, all these industries are being disrupted. The publishing world was disrupted by Amazon.
Yeah.
Seeing the Hollywood business, the movie business is completely disrupted by all these different streaming platforms that are making more money than studios. And the same thing happening in the media space, where the middlemen and women are being cut out, and you're giving an opportunity for people to go directly to the source to
Mhm.
produce content and
Mhm.
then get it directly out there in a massive scale of distribution. And it's just broken down the barriers and given people opportunities, everything from YouTube to social media platform. It's
Mhm.
this is how Justin Bieber came about. He didn't have this big music deal. So you're
Right.
seeing this disruption in almost every industry across the board. And it's just really created more opportunity for people to get their content out there that normally wouldn't be able to afford to do it the traditional ways.
Well,
Or
and
they'd have to get external permission from somebody. And
yes.
and here's a mantra you mentioned earlier. I use this mantra all the time. And it's if one can do it, so can many. Why not me?
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, to let people be inspired and then think, how would I do it? Where would I start? The seven figure book deal method.com might be a place
Yeah.
to start. But
Yes,
also,
seven figure, it's the number seven, no dash, is
mhm,
sevenfigurebookmethod.com. And that book, when we launched that book, we did over $1 million from that book without even publishing it on Amazon.
wow.
So I discovered this whole new method that people were using that no one was really talking about. And it wasn't giving your book away for free. It was selling it for a low ticket amount, but building your own funnel because each business has a front end and a back end, just like Amazon has a front end and a back end. And when you're publishing on Amazon, there's nothing wrong with that, and you should still do it. But then Amazon gets that client, and you don't even know who bought your book. And so we just wanted to make it really simple for people to be able to produce that. And we now have opportunities for people who can literally write their book in a weekend and
Mhm.
not AI writing it, extracting your own knowledge, something you paid a huge price to learn. For example, let's say you are an insurance agent and you've been an owner broker for 30 years and you want to retire. Isn't it selfish to retire with all that knowledge? If you really
Yeah.
think about it, when there's
Mhm.
millions of new agents coming into the marketplace who don't know how to set up an office, run a business,
Mhm.
get clients, serve clients, in most every industry from real estate to insurance to the RIAs in the financial space, they just teach you how to go recruit things, recruit people, but they don't really teach you how to actually sell the products. And
The-
so if you're somebody that's done that, why not write a book and become a mentor and charge for your time to help somebody else save decades,
It's like
right?
getting a dividend on all that investment in your career and your industry knowledge, that you earn dividends while you help lift other people up. In coaching, sometimes we look to people to say, if you're climbing, reach down and help someone behind you. Don't pull up the ladder. But if they write a book that said, this is the 360-degree view of how you run an insurance business, you're
Mhm.
not pulling up the ladder. You're helping other people, and you're not even in the business anymore. So you may as well help other people and earn
Right?
some dividends on a long career. So I really love that ecosystem that you're talking about. Can you share with me one of the defining moment stories? I know for you, you lost a baby, and that was the beginning of a difficult decade. There was, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, problems in your medical care. We'll leave it at that. And understanding that in the state you were in, you couldn't even get justice for procedures that were not followed, things that weren't done. It was just a compounded tragedy that you had to live through. And that kicked off a 10-year difficult decade for you. But I know you also have stories that you've published of resilience, and I don't know if you have one that sticks out that you learned early on, or that a lot of people say, I remember this story from the third Defining Moments book or whatever. Is there one that stands out?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. We literally have thousands of stories that we've published that are just so inspirational.
Mm,
One of them that really stands out to me is somewhat well known, and he has since passed on. But I had a friend named Mike Reynolds, and his daughter Kimber was actually murdered in our city where we live many years ago, probably 30 years ago.
mm,
And she was basically approached on the street, and this guy drove by on a motorcycle, grabbed her purse. She just slightly resisted. He shot her in the head. She went on life support for a few days. Her dad came to her. His name is Mike Reynolds,
mhm,
and he vowed that he was going to find her killer and he was going to do something about it. And he was in mourning, but he immediately went on the radio in a local market,
mhm,
leveraged the media to his benefit, and started talking about all these things that happened so that people were turning in tips.
There
He
was
put a
buzz
report.
about it, and people were
Yeah.
on lookout. He's activated a local army to help him.
Yes, and here's the thing, this guy was a dad and
Mm,
he was a wedding photographer. He
mm,
knew nothing about justice, politics, or anything. And I love the defining moment of how somebody, as a father trying to protect his daughter, making her dying wish promise, I promise you I'm going to find these guys and I'm going to bring them to justice in honor of you as she was dying. Those were his last words to her. So eventually, within a few days, they found these guys. They had a shootout with the police. I think both of them were killed, if I recall. It's been a while. And so he took it a step further. And he actually went all the way to the state assembly in California and made a law called the Three Strikes Law. It turns out that the guys that killed his daughter were repeat offenders and they had been in and out of jail, the revolving jail. So he
mhm,
fought really hard for years to make this a law. He
mhm,
became an advocate. It
mhm.
became a law in all 50 states, and he was able to save, the estimated idea is almost is several million lives from
Wow.
people that were put into jail by the
Mhm,
three strikes law that basically said if you have a couple of crimes, then by the third time, you're going to go to jail for life, especially if it's a violent crime. You're stealing things and you're already acting like somebody that isn't a model citizen, and then
mhm.
you escalate to shooting somebody or attempting to hurt somebody.
You
Like,
definitely are a person who's putting the rest of society at risk. You've
yes,
decided
absolutely.
that the fabric of society means nothing to you, and
Yes.
everyone is at risk that interacts with you. To be walking down the street and having a purse snatched and then be murdered for it, oh my gosh. Yeah, coping.
This was in my first book. So his story inspired me. Okay. And
Mhm,
then here's another one I'll tell you. I used to have a magazine. I used to have a magazine, and this one just still gives me chills. But long story short, Mike went on to do so many amazing things in the world for so many people and did a couple of other political laws that are
mhm,
still in place
mhm,
after he has passed away a few years ago. This is a father who changed the trajectory of his life because of what happened to his daughter.
mhm,
Same thing happened with a couple who their son took his own life, and he was a twin. He was 15 years old, and
mhm.
they created this organization that's now national called SOS, which is Survivors of Suicide. And
Okay.
their story was we featured them in one of our local magazines.
Mhm,
We ran their story. This was just about 2 months after my son had passed away. I felt this urgency to share Mike's stories, and a few other people that were in our local community. And they talked about the signs and all this. And that was published in December. In January, I was walking through a restaurant in my hometown, and this woman came up and asked, "Are you Melanie with, this
mhm,
magazine?" And
mhm.
I said, "Yes." And she broke down in tears. And I said, "Are you okay?" And
Yes.
she said,
Normally, when you introduce yourself, tears don't follow. So this is not, yeah,
"Yeah."
something you're used to.
And she said, "I just have to share something with you. You wrote this article about this family locally and the signs." And she said, we read it and it really something spoke to us. So we had a teenage son who was straight A student, never got in trouble. We
Mhm,
decided he was very quiet and we
mhm,
felt disconnected. So we took him camping for a few days right before Christmas. We read your article in December. We decided to go camp with him for a few days, got away from his friends, his phone, everything.
mhm.
He admitted to them that he and 10 of his friends had a suicide pact and they were planning to kill themselves on Christmas Day.
Oh my gosh.
And they were able to get a hold of the parents and get counseling. And all of those kids are still alive and well today, thank God. But here's what she said. And she looked me in the eye, and I get chills thinking about it. She said, "What if you would have written that in January
Yeah.
and not December?" And
No.
I think about that every day. So to me, the urgency for anybody listening to this or watching this is your knowledge has so much value to somebody else. If you have the ability to solve somebody's physical cancer, emotional cancer, relationship cancer, financial cancer,
Mhm,
or some kind of pain point in their life, if
mhm,
you can save somebody a decade and
mhm,
teach them these skills in a day, something
mhm,
that's taken you 20, 30 years to learn,
mhm,
and you don't share that knowledge with other people, it
mhm,
is being selfish. It is a disservice. And it's not someday I'm going to put this in a book, someday I'm going to share it. There is an urgency in the message because that information that you take for granted could mean life or death for somebody else.
yes.
And that's where I say the urgency is get those stories and get that knowledge out and help the people that are struggling. Because here's the thing, they are willing to pay for your time.
Mhm,
I paid for mentors. Every mentor I had, from Tony Robbins to Mark Victor Hansen to Jack Canfield to
mhm,
so many mentors over the years, I paid for their time and their expertise. And I learned so much from them. And I'm so grateful. But there was an exchange of value and energy in their knowledge and experience and what they taught me.
yeah. And I think that we don't know what we don't know. So we assume there's some kind of ripple effect. You see this sometimes where people show how a good deed goes from one to the next. But I think there is an inner voice sometimes. There's a feeling that says, okay, I just feel compelled to do this. And thank you for answering that inner voice and saying, we're going to get these stories published. And how often is it that someone who had that ripple effect can run into you and say, are you Melanie? Let me tell you the difference you made. We often don't ever see the difference we made. But you're here to say that difference gets made.
Absolutely. And there are people who urgently need help and support with these things, whether it's
Mhm,
starting a business or saving a marriage or saving a family or helping somebody get through bankruptcy or foreclosure. And for me, the urgency came from almost losing my life, right? I came about 90 seconds away from dying. And I
mhm.
immediately thought in that moment, besides, what about my family? What about my community? What about my laundry? The unfinished
The things
business.
you think of, yeah.
I really, no joke, thought about my laundry. I know it's sick. But then I thought, what about my book? I can't die. I haven't finished my book yet.
Mhm,
And that was always on my bucket list to write a book. And it was more of an aspirational goal that felt like this, like I needed this lifetime of wisdom before I would be ready to write a book that anybody would want to read. But
mhm,
now I realize that every single one of us has an amazing story to tell, and we have something unique that we were put on this planet to do, a purpose, a passion. And we don't have to be Miss America who's this thin to help somebody
mhm,
lose 20 pounds, to have
mhm.
credibility to help somebody else get a result.
The lived
So,
experience has value, right? A person's lived experience has value. And I think what's you mentioned Chicken Soup of the Soul and Jack Canfield, those were people you could trust your stories with. And
mhm.
now you're a person who someone can trust their stories with, that you can identify that's a story worth telling. This is the way to shape it. Now that you've built a media empire, we need to shape it in a book, or we need to have it be on the TV show, or we need it on a longer form podcast, or whatever that is. But you are someone that people can trust with their stories, whether it's this is how I built a successful business, or this is how I survived a difficult period of time, and people get hope and they see the possibility of transformation for themselves. Congratulations on this big launch in New York City. Do you have any final thoughts about how people can be resilient when the tough times come? When the rain starts pouring and it feels like the sun's never going to come out again, do you have thoughts about how people can just hang on until the storm passes?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is to know that everything is a season. As cliche as that sounds, it doesn't mean it's going to be forever, even though your pain feels like it's going to be forever, especially when you're dealing with grief. It's this really gray energy. And it's like when you try to enjoy yourself and maybe you're watching a movie and it reaches its gray, grubby hand into your popcorn and tries to ruin every moment. It's like eventually you process it and you can move forward where you don't feel guilty. And I think you want to get to that place where you can feel joy again
Yes.
without feeling guilty. And that's really the process of grief that we all want to get to. Grief comes in many forms, whether it's loss of a spouse or someone you love, or a job or an identity or a relationship
A
that
career.
you love, a
Mhm.
career, like people in retirement. There's a lot of people that are retiring and losing their identity. And it's just they don't feel like they have purpose anymore. This is why they say the average person dies 4 years into retirement because they
Mhm.
lose their sense of purpose.
They
So
don't have a reason to get up in the morning again.
and I believe that everybody has a purpose. And we actually have tools. That's how I started, is helping people find their purpose. I've taught millions of people within
Mhm.
a few minutes how to find their purpose. And that's really a fun thing too. And we show people how to monetize their purpose, because people
Mhm.
think, oh, if I just go on Good Morning America, I'm going to make money, but they don't pay you to do that. So you don't get
Mhm.
paid to do a TED Talk. You
Mhm.
still have to monetize your platform, and
Mhm.
you do that through books and
Mhm.
speaking engagements,
Mhm.
expert fees. You could be an expert witness in trials. Like,
Courses that people develop where you can find your purpose, that kind of thing. And it's wonderful that you can show people this is how we shape this experience so that it could also pay you dividends.
absolutely. And you're paying it forward, but
Mhm.
it's giving people purpose. So, especially the people that are like worried about losing their job, I'm like,
Mhm.
let your boss be your first client. Like, I love helping people transition out
Mhm.
of working for somebody, because it's easier to have a business that pays you several $100,000 a year or even $1 million a year than to try to get a job that's going to pay you that in
Mhm.
this type of economy. And
Mhm.
the more that you can help somebody solve a pain point in their life, the faster you can solve that pain point for them, the more they're willing to pay. And that's where a lot of employees don't always understand. They have expertise, but
Mhm.
they're used to paying dollars, trading dollars for hours.
For
And they
time.
have to shift into, wow, someone will pay me $5,000 for something that just took me a few hours to do.
If I've been good at it for 10 years or good at it for 20 years, yeah, it is a paradigm shift. It turns it on your head. And it takes a little while to get that tried on and have it make sense, but you can show people the way. So tell people how to get a hold of you. We've given them, and we'll include down below how to get that book idea there. But
Sure.
are there other ways that people can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. You can follow me on pretty much all social media platforms at Melanie Warner or Defining Moments. Also, sevenfigurebookmethod.com or mydefiningmoments.com, which
Okay.
is the book method, gives you very specific view of how to build a book in a funnel that is client conversion model formula. Mydefiningmoments.com gives you a broader scope of books and media, plus our TV shows and podcasts and all the other things that we're working on.
We'll definitely have people go there because you just came through your launch. They're going to want to see, oh my gosh, we want to see what stories she's telling now.
Absolutely. And just also watching out for the TV show and the podcast so you can get more extended versions if you like these stories.
Oh,
One of
sure.
the things I love doing is at the end of every episode for the podcast and the TV show, we
Mhm.
share a defining moment from somebody that's well known, whether they're living or no longer with us. You don't know who that person is until the end,
Mhm.
because you hear their story and then realize this was the defining moment of that person.
That's very
Pretty
exciting.
powerful. Yeah.
Yes, and I can't wait to see this book about the value of a woman. You
Yes, the
know,
cash value of a
the
woman.
cash
Yeah.
value of a woman is going to be very exciting. And there is a lot of change that's happening in gender identity and workplace dynamics. And I think to harken back to your great grandmother in 1915, see how far we've come. What a champion you are, a
Thank you.
successful female global entrepreneur. Thank you for sharing all these stories and,
Thank you. And
leading
thank
the
you to the
pack.
women. Thank you to the women that helped you and I get to this
Yes,
space of being able to have this conversation and
right.
have the freedoms and opportunities that we have with the sacrifices they made as well.
These choices were not available, and now they are.
And in 1915, she wrote an essay called The Cash Value of a Woman. And the goal was to try to convince men to allow their wives to spend $15 a year, because she
Mhm.
was convinced it would help the economy. Back then, 90% of America was living well below the poverty level.
Mhm.
And once women started learning how to spend money, how to save money, how to just were being educated about money, now the irony is here we are all these years later, and it's estimated in the next 5 to 10 years women will control $15 trillion.
Wow.
And in the United States, women spend 85 cents out of every dollar. And if you're married, you probably think it's more like 100. Um, and the spending power of American women is greater than the entire economy of Japan
Wow.
when you think about it. So we call it the power of the purse. So
Yeah.
the cash value of a woman was written in 1915, where she assigned a nickel to every task that a woman did. If you had to hire a wife or a mother to do all these things, we
Mm,
wouldn't dream of paying them. They do it out of love for their
mhm,
families, but
mm.
it equated to over $60,000 back then. You will
Wow.
never believe what it equates to in today's dollars.
I
And
imagine.
I joke and say, if you ever want to know the true cash value of a woman, ask a divorced man.
There we go, because somebody did some math and that check goes out every month. Yeah, it's exciting and congratulations on all your success. It was a delight to get to know you.
Thank you.
Everyone, go find out where she's at. Visit definingmoments.com, right?
MyDefiningMoments.com and also cashvaluewoman.com is for
Cool.
that book. So there's multiple ones, but MyDefiningMoments.com is our main one that kind of has
Is your hub,
a
the
hub for
defining.
everything.
Congratulations. And I'm inspired. I hope you
Thank
all
you,
were
Melanie.
inspired too. It was great to see everybody.
Thank
Thanks
y'all. Take
again. We'll
care.
see you all next time.